Thank you all for joining me today. We're here to talk about our tailored GP practice apprenticeships, and specifically the GP practice business administrator apprenticeship, which is really an apprenticeship that's suitable for anyone in an administrative position. We'll talk more about some of those particular positions that we tend to see come on board with this program, but really for anyone in administration within GP practice or within PCNs. So I'm Max. I'm part of the apprenticeship team here at Community Matters. I'm going to be your host today. The content's probably going to take us around about half an hour. If I could ask you all we are recording, so I could ask you to pop your questions either into the chat box or just save them up for the end. And hopefully by the end, guys, whether you're a candidate interested in joining the apprenticeship yourself, or you're looking for someone within your organisation, hopefully by the time we wrap up, you're going to have all the information that you need really to make an informed decision as to whether this journey is right for you. So we're going to be talking about the apprenticeship in detail, the curriculum, eligibility, suitability, what the learning journey looks like. But I also want to just start with just a minute or two on Community Matters. I think probably most of you will be familiar with us from our work within Training Hub. So we are very much involved with the delivery and orchestration of the North East London Training Hub, but also involved in NCL as well. And as you can see, been in operation since 2010, huge experience in working within the NHS, health and social care, and specifically working with GP practices and PCNs. And I suppose really where apprenticeships came from, they just sprang out organically from all this work that we're doing in the Training Hub world, providing the training, workforce development, needs mapping, etc., and practices coming to us and saying, well, hey, what about apprenticeships? Because they're government funded and they provide a really comprehensive training that can help further individuals' skills development, and also obviously meet some practice needs around critical skills that might be required. So that's how we got into it. We've been an accredited apprenticeship provider for the last 4 years. And I suppose what that means is it's taken us absolutely core audience, still very much primary care, and hence the presentation here today, and hence this tailored apprenticeship. And I'll talk more why we did that in a moment. But it's also taking us to providing services wider into the NHS, wider into the public sector, and indeed into the third sector as well. So we have a variety of different apprenticeships that we offer. As you can see, many of them very much tailored for GP practice. And today we're here obviously to talk about this one. So I also wanted to spend just a few minutes on the why. So why do individuals from primary care, why do individuals from primary care come on this journey, and why did we go to the effort? And we're going back sort of a couple of years ago now, always continuing to develop it, but why did we go to the effort to tailor this program, to take this business administrator standard that's used, I suppose, widely across the whole of the UK? Why did we go to the effort to tailor it for this primary care audience, and what benefits does that bring? So, we did a lot of work with stakeholders, practice managers, program managers, clinical leads, all the stakeholders you could think of who are very much involved in the delivery of primary care within obviously the regions and localities I've spoken about. And we did some discovery and some needs mapping, and I suppose where we got to is thinking about education that we can provide for these two distinct, but I suppose also sort of overlapping populations that we see within primary care, which is those in those practice manager positions and future practice manager positions, and the sort of general administrative population. And typically, when we're thinking about this apprenticeship, those who are not necessarily managing people might be managing things, but also sort of in individual delivery roles. And we went through, what are the goals and what are the challenges that practices are faced with right now. obviously big consideration of a 10-year plan wasn't out then, but we've always had these plan long-term workforce plans, etc. And thinking about not just the sort of challenges that face now, but also what's sort of coming down the line. So with that, we wanted to make sure that we were then taking these standards and building these, as you say, 2 apprenticeships that we felt really helped us to meet the needs of those 2 populations. And went about tailoring the program, and we'll talk more about that when we look at the curriculum as to what's involved. But yeah, tailoring that curriculum so that what you're learning, yes, you're learning some general theory about business administration, but your learning is very much dialing into the lived experience of what those scenarios will look like within general practice, and also because you'll be going on this journey if you do sign up with individuals from general practice and PCNs, that again all the kind of learning, it becomes very relevant to you actually within your role, and we find that to be hugely beneficial in terms of giving you the sort of skills that you need, but also embedding the learning becomes a hell of a lot easier as well. So that was the process that we went through. Keeping in mind, and sort of anecdotally we received this, but I think it's probably backed up by statistics as well, not just within the localities that I mentioned, but I think broader across the NHS, in that we know that the required administrative and digital skills are changing. Digital, obviously, that shift that we're talking about, analog to digital. We know administrative skills that are required are different now to what they were a few years ago. More patient-facing responsibilities as we try and free up clinical staff to do their jobs. We know we actually have and this was a big reason for developing these programs, was that we know we've got long-standing staff with lots of historical knowledge, in those practice managers positions, often, who are nearing departure. I think something like 1 in 5 practice managers looking to leave primary care within the next 5 years. So we need to make sure that we're developing those leaders for the future, and both those apprenticeships that I've spoken about really help us, build that pipeline and ensure that succession planning. We know that talent acquisition it has becoming harder. Obviously, the last year or so, possibly what we've seen is a bit of change in that, in regards to, obviously, we're seeing some quite high unemployment levels, but actually we're still seeing it's quite difficult actually to get back people back into work. So the thought process there was, these programs are available. Obviously, all you guys have joined as individuals already in practice, but we also want to use these programs to actually encourage new talent into an organization, so that you can join with the promise of starting an apprenticeship, either from the get-go or maybe when you've gone through your probation period. And also, I think a really big one was newer staff leaving practices because they didn't feel there was the opportunities to develop. We know that there's relatively high churn within administrative roles in general practice, and much of that's avoidable. And apprenticeships aren't the sort of necessarily the panacea that's going to resolve that problem altogether, but certainly is part of the package. If we can provide that opportunity for someone to go on, develop their skills, gain a qualification, potentially enable them to maybe pivot into a new role that they're interested in, then clearly people are more likely to stay for that opportunity, and likely to stay longer because of kind of the loyalty that engenders as well. As I said, this not just what we see anecdotally, we do see this reflected in wider NHS challenges. But the good news is that when we look at apprenticeship success across the board, across the UK, we are seeing high amount of starts each year when it comes to apprenticeship. There's it's a big focus on it. Again, we look at the new 10-year plan, apprenticeships mentioned on many occasions, and we know that it does serve to it does serve to improve retention ratio. It does serve to, address that the sort of avoidable churn that I've spoken about, and it also helps us, as you can see, 60% moving into more senior roles within 3 years. So it's helping with that mobility, and we know that apprenticeships also, very, very inclusive in a way that perhaps other forms of education aren't always. So it's obviously really helping us when it comes to some of our EDI goals as well. We've tailored this to your needs. So it's taught by people who understand your organisation. All of our background, as you can see, as Community Matters, is within primary care. So those individuals are benefiting from that knowledge. Just to say also that you'll have a core tutor, but because of our relationships in primary care, we can also bring in guest speakers. So, for example, I attended one of the sessions for this course actually just before Christmas. We were doing something on, I think it was kind of stakeholder management, and we had a physician associate from Camden pop in. And lead on some of that training. We've just delivered what the digital IT and digital module from this for this course for one of the cohorts, and I know that there was an individual, a practice manager, who's been also playing a role in sort of transformation leadership and digital leadership, and again they came in and taught that session. So you're getting that that great experience to learn from individuals within primary care, not just the teachers, but as I mentioned before, also those coming on the learning journey with you. Sorry, I should say there's a slight correction to this. Let's look. It's come from a slightly different slide deck, because it's not only for GP practices in North and East London. I don't know you guys on the call whether you are from some of the different training hubs. We have developed relationships over the last 6 months with some training hubs outside of London who are also benefiting from these programs. So yeah, you could be going on the journey with others from outside, but the key thing is that everyone on that journey will be from GP practice or PCNs. Obviously, it's tailored curriculum. I think I've spoken about that, and we'll speak about that more when I show it to you. And it's fully funded with the levy organised by the provider or the training hub. So you don't have to put your money in your own pockets for this programme, and neither does your practice. Okay, so I'm going to turn now to a bit more detail around the actual apprenticeship itself. So in terms of who the program's for, this isn't an exhaustive list, but these are the sort of, when we look at those who've come on board and apply for the program, these are the typical roles. But if you're not in that role, that doesn't matter. I would encourage you, when we look at the curriculum slides, to just be thinking about actually, is it going to be teaching me things that's going to be valuable to me, and am I in a position where I can actually apply the things that I'm learning into the job role? Because what's really important in apprenticeships is that we need to be demonstrating all the way through when you become really familiar with this term, if you do sign up, KSBs, knowledge, skills, and behaviours. So you must be able to apply what you're learning into your job role. Don't think it's going to be necessarily an issue for anyone here in terms of the eligibility. Over 16, not in full-time education, should work at least 30 hours a week. We do have individuals who work less than that. It probably is easiest if you are working those hours, and and the reason for that is being able to commit what we call the off the job requirements. So that's 6 hours a week, but we do have individuals working as little as 20 hours. All it means is the higher percentage of your time in that instance might be spent on the apprenticeship, or the apprenticeship will end up lasting a little bit longer. So if you're under that and you're on the call, don't worry about it. We probably need to have a little bit more of a conversation around how that's going to work. Should be employed in England, resident in the UK or the EA for the last 3 years. And then the big one is the commitment of the 6 hours a week. Now, it's not going to be not going to feel like 6 hours away from your desk each week, purely on the training, because a lot of it is applying the skills into your job. So I'll talk more about what that looks like. It's quite nuanced, and it will vary by individual, but I'll give you a bit of a flavour of what that typically looks like for those on this programme. But the key thing is, you do need to absolutely have the backing of your line manager and employer, who are going to be saying, yeah, I am happy for you to be committing time each week that you would all ordinarily have been spent on your day job dedicated to learning. Okay, so that's really, really important to understand that. Okay, so what does the program look like in more detail? So the length of it, 12 to 15 months, plus 3 months for what we call the apprenticeship assessment. So the 12 to 15 months will be spent on this core curriculum, learning with us. In terms of what that looks like, you are going to have a monthly workshop or lecture on basically on these topics as you work through. Now, if you are in London, 1 in every 3 of those is going to be face to face. There's lots of advantages of that. We get people really, really enjoy having the opportunity to have that face to face time. But the other 2 will be online, and that important to just give you guys that flexibility and balance off the the benefits of face to face with obviously the benefits of not having to travel in and not having that sort of time commitment pressure that you might have when you do need to do that. I say it's for those in London, so the location will be in London. Almost certainly will be in North London. You'll be going on your learning journey with about 12 others. There'll probably be a couple of cohorts kind of from this intake, and when we get those applications, we look around, see where the individuals come from. We try and make that as a kind of a local cohort as we can do. But what I can say is once every 3 months you're traveling, and unless you are traveling into your workplace, it shouldn't you shouldn't be more than an hour's journey. An hour's journey from your workplace, let's say, rather than from your home, because also we don't necessarily know where all of you guys live. If you're outside of London, then it will all be virtual. Reason being, what we found is that it's been quite hard to find a sort of a central hub location outside of London for those individuals. So we do look into that, because again, we see the value of face-to-face learning, but typically you should take it that it would be a full virtual delivery. So you have that one workshop once a month. That's from 9:30 to 3:30, and then what you'll also have is a one-to-one session with your tutor for an hour, which is typically virtual, although you might find that over the course of the apprenticeship they will come and visit you at your workplace. So that's your core contact hours with us, and then the rest of that 6 hours is going to be made up of self-paced learning, so readings that we give you, mini assessments that we ask you to do, and then the application of the skills actually into the job role, which will then form part of your what we call your work-based project. So we talked about that apprenticeship assessment at the end, and give you an idea here as to sort of what that's made up of. You've got 3 months. Obviously, that's not 3 months doing this, as you can see. That's a time at the end. Once you've wrapped up the learning with us, to just prepare for this. So preparing for that project presentation, pulling your portfolio together. I mean, you'll be doing that sort of all the way through. With after each module, we'll set you little tasks. But yeah, just preparing yourself at that stage, and obviously we'll be preparing you for that. I'll talk more about how we do that in some of the subsequent slides. You get a formal government accredited qualification at the end of it, which is equivalent to A levels. And then obviously in terms of what you're learning, I think I've sent you guys all the course fact sheets. I'll pop them through again. After this call, but giving you an idea there of what's involved, and obviously because it's tailored, you're not just learning about record keeping and document production, but it's about what that looks like in primary care. So learning about things like the Data Protection Act, Caldecott Principles, Office of the Information Commissioner. When you're looking at IT, it's not just generic IT packages. It's thinking about EMIS, and it's thinking about Accurates, and it's thinking about the NHS app, and sort of how we use AI within the NHS. So all contextualized stakeholders, again, thinking about those stakeholders, obviously people who come into practice, those who sit within PCNs, etc. So I won't go through and describe these all because you'll have the opportunity to have a look at that course fact sheet, and it will break down all of those into everything that you'll learn, but very much a tailored curriculum, and obviously a tailored experience with that cohort of individuals in very similar positions to yourself, but just in different localities. So hopefully that helps you give you a flavour of what that looks like. I'm going to turn to talking about how we actually deliver the learning. In the interest of time, because I think this video it's about 7 minutes, so I'm just conscious of of not sort of eating into your lunch break. But when I send this around to you tomorrow, do spend 7 minutes having a look at Dominica's story. Really interesting one. We have a real mix of ages on these programs, and a real mix of sort of levels of seniority. So absolutely, we have individuals who straight into GP practice as maybe trainee practice assistants and join these programs. But we also have people like Dominica, who's worked in GP practice for 5-6 years, and obviously familiar with a lot of the things on the curriculum, but just looking to upskill, looking to gain that really valuable qualification for her own development. And yeah, a great story of someone who's really engaged in the program. She's actually been promoted while on program as well, Dominica. So she's now in more of a managerial role, but still finding that the apprenticeship things it's teaching her there around project management and stakeholder engagement, it's very valuable for that managerial position as well. So yeah, take a look at that one, and it'll give you a bit more of an insight into what that experience looks like. So in terms of the learning with us, I've probably spoken about some of this already. We've got these 6 hours, and sort of this is what it's made up of. We mentioned those one-to-one sessions with your tutor, so that's an opportunity for you to maybe go through some things from the lecture or the workshop you didn't quite understand, obviously in a one-to-one environment. It might be, obviously, we individuals take holidays. Of course they do while they're on program. All the sessions are recorded, by the way, so you can always catch up. But you might find that one-to-one session, because you've been away, you want an opportunity to learn some things that you might have missed from your absence there. But you also find that you'll be talking to the tutor about the portfolio that you're developing, some of the workbooks and mini assignments that we assign you, how are you progressing with those? And then more broadly, almost certainly over the course of 15 months, you're probably going to find there's some challenges at your work from time to time, right? You're going to be busy people. You may find that there are times when the apprenticeship maybe has to be deprioritized a little. So working with the tutor, it's actually how can we pull a plan together to sort of get you back and navigate some of those hurdles that you might have been facing. And that's a sort of a good connection also to our tripartite review. So these reviews are with yourself and your line manager and the tutor. So we ask you to attend those every 3 months, 1 hour online, and this is an opportunity to bring your line manager into the mix, because they do play a part. They're going to play an important part in terms of ring fencing that time for you, but also making sure that you're in a position where actually you can evidence the knowledge, skills, and behaviours. You're working on projects that allow you to apply the things that you're learning into your job role. So they have a part to play, and specifically they'll be needed for these tripartite reviews, and of course preparing you for the apprenticeship assessment at the end. Okay, so you've seen what's entailed within that, and it's important that we have a process called Gateway. So we don't have any people fail on this program. Individuals obviously may drop out during the program, but when we get towards the end, we're only passing people through to that final stage if they're ready to go there. If not, that's fine. We just continue developing until they are ready to pass through. So assisting them obviously with the portfolio and mock professional discussions. So we know they've got all those answers they need to showcase their talents best, and to get the best possible grade, obviously a pass or a distinction. And we're seeing increasing numbers of individuals getting that higher level grade. So a reminder of the commitment, for yourselves, if you're a candidate, it's all about just committing to those hours, turning up to those workshops, engaging in those workshops. As a manager, it's about making sure that you're protecting that learning time, potentially assisting on the work-based projects, providing exposure, but particularly as an individual who might be sort of new to general practice. And then obviously our commitment to you is the quality of the teaching, the assessor sessions, and more broadly within an organisation, obviously always looking at continuous improvement. So making sure there's good feedback loops in place. You'll hopefully won't get tired of the surveys that we pump out to you, but we are always looking for feedback and addressing it to give you the best possible learning experience. So if you do sign up, guys, then this is what it will look like. The application deadline's at the end of March, and we start end of April. So no less than sort of 3 weeks, a month to complete all this. We have a system called Aptum. All apprenticeship providers really use Aptum. You'll need to upload details, and there'll be some administrative work for you to do and for your line manager to do. And we'll organise the levy transfer for you, so that makes sure that the programme is free of charge. But again, we'll need your employer to create an account if they haven't got one, or activate an old account, and undertake a few steps. And we're very prescriptive about what we ask them to do. They'll receive all that from the moment you sign up. But obviously you're going to have support of your line manager anyway. Worth speaking to your line manager and speaking to your employer and just letting them know there's going to be a bit of admin work for you to do to make this program a reality for me. And then, just to sum up, what do GP practices think of this program? So looking at those who've joined over the last 4 months, 88% rating the program either excellent or very good. So, we get really, really good feedback, and also our we call it QAR, so achievers, etc. That's really, really high compared to the industry standard. And I think that it probably speaks to the fact that we've tailored this program, and that really helps to sort of elevate the learning experience and make it more beneficial to you, and that means people enjoy it more and stay on the program longer. So next steps, those application deadlines are completely wrong. So as I said, I've definitely run into an issue with the deck here, where I've got some old information. So I do apologise. I'm going to stop sharing because that's where we're up to anyhow in terms of the content, and I will make sure that tomorrow, guys, you will get a deck with some corrections made, and obviously you'll be aware of all of the deadlines. But basically what we're looking at is the end of March, so you've got a couple of weeks to get those applications through, by the 31st, and then starting at the end of April. But as I say, I'll send that through, and there's also a good sort of infographic there around those 6 hours, because obviously we're always, as I mentioned, speaking to learners, getting feedback, and asking them, okay, what does that 6 hours really look like? And generally what we're seeing is that finding that half of that over the course of a month, if we look at it like that, is sort of spent on contact time with us, and the sort of assignments that we set. Those assignments you're not graded on, by the way. It's just to help prepare you for those final assessments that I referenced. And then the other half of the time is going to be more self-paced learning. So obviously much flexibly can fit that into your weave that into your working week out, however best you see fit, and that workplace application. So a big chunk of it is doing the job that you would be doing ordinarily, but just so happens that obviously you're taking that learning and those new skills, and you're applying it to those projects and initiatives and work streams that that you're presiding over. So hopefully that's given you, I said at the top of the call, that try and give you as much information to make an informed decision. And I imagine there may still be a couple of questions. I can see one in the chat, so I'll start with that one. From Maram. So is there an age limit, for example, over 16 and under 30? No, not at all. As I mentioned, look at Dominica's video. That's an individual who is been in practice for a long time. I won't ask, or I wouldn't have asked her exact age, but she's certainly over the limit that you reference. And speaking from previous experience in apprenticeships, I think my last company we had an apprenticeship who was 77. So apprentice who was 77. Sorry. So no, not at all. Just have to be over 16, which I think I referenced earlier, but no upper age limit to consider. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. You had answered it in the presentation as
fine.
well. Apologies,
No.
This was in the middle.
No, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. I would see there's a few other people typing. Obviously, feel free to type, or just turn your mute off and ask the question, or put your hand up. Whatever's best, guys. Happy to take questions anyways. Okay, so Dr. Patel, which course is better for practice managers, operational or BA? Operations manager would definitely be better for practice managers, because that's all around leadership. So BA may be helpful to them, but no, I would definitely encourage them to do that. No reason why they shouldn't do. That's all starting at the same time. Dr. Patel, do you have information on that? You do. Okay, great. Yeah. So yes, would encourage you to look at that one. I think probably there's some overlaps in these two programs. Obviously, one's a level 3, one's a level 5, so different education level. But I wouldn't really say that's the most important thing. The most important thing is, are you in a position to apply the skills that you're learning into the job role? But there's some overlap. The project management program, the IT programs, pretty much the same for both. But basically, operations manager, we're looking for people who are managing people and or managing things, like ideally both. So by things I mean kind of projects, etc. And then I think business administrator is more for those who are more in kind of individual roles. Nia, I have a level 5 diploma in business management and marketing. Am I still applicable for this, or better suited for level 5 apprenticeship? Nia, what's your role? Okay, fine. So I think send me a direct email on that, Nia. I think one thing that we sort of haven't talked about much on this program, I think generally those who are getting in touch and expressing interest are already in post, are already in position. To start the apprenticeship, you need to be in a position. But what we do, obviously, as you can probably imagine, what we do have is relationships with GP practices, and that means that we can find, and have done in the past, find opportunities for individuals who are well suited for GP practice and want to undertake this apprenticeship. So Nia, we could maybe have a discussion around that. I think in terms of your level 5, it is important, if you have prior education that is relevant. So sometimes people think, I've got a degree, I can't do this. That doesn't matter. As long as the degree isn't in something where there's a lot of course overlap. And I don't know off the top of my head how much course overlap there would be, but we could have a look at it. So Nia, just drop me. Well, I'll be dropping you a note anyway. I'm sure you've already got my details, and let's organise a time to speak. And I can't promise anything, but we definitely are speaking with practices on a regular basis around roles that they might be looking to recruit for. So hopefully there's something we can do on that front. Cool. Is there any other questions before we wrap up? All right, I'll take that as a no. Which really just leaves me to say thank you all very much for joining. Really appreciate it. I hope to see some of you on the programme when we kick off in April. And expect to receive that information from me tomorrow, guys. Okay? All right, take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.